Green with Film Critique. And I love what you guys have done with Quantum Leap. I used to watch it when I was young. So I really love how there's so much diversity in the show. And one thing with this episode is for Magic, he was going through a lot of trauma. And I think that that was really important how you guys put that in there, that even though it was so long ago, dealing with that kind of trauma affected him in his personal life and the issues that he was dealing with. So, can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think, for us is like, because we wanted to, again, where Magic came from and where he is now. And if you're going to really explore this character about all the stuff that's happened, as this guy who is a former Navy SEAL, an admiral, and now the head of this multi-billion-dollar top secret program, and the responsibilities and the loss that they had for those 3 years when they thought they lost Ben Song after he disappeared, right? So, which drove him towards diving into a bottle, right, to get away from it all. I think in the struggles of that, but then also again from a military background, and as a Black man, there's a lot of traumatic stress and pain that you carry, that you bury. And so for Magic, this was we thought this would be a good, for when I say good, for the storytelling, a good triggering point of thinking of this guy that he's being able to hold it all together when he sees Dwayne in that moment. It all comes flooding back. And then as he realizes that even though as much as you try to bury that past and you try to forget it or you try to move on, it's always going to be a part of you. And it's how do you cope with it? How do you deal with it? And that's more reflective again of myself as as a person who has experienced this, and most everybody on here has experienced some sort of history that you think that you've forgotten, but there's moments where it gets triggered, right? And so in today's society, especially, and all the stuff that we deal with.
Mm. And even throughout my prep process, I spoke to Ernie, and I mean, as Deric said, Ernie's a legend, and it was really great to have just a one-on-one conversation with Ernie the man, and to get his story. And because his story is Magic's story, in many ways. And so because Ernie had the personal connection to this story, it made it all the more powerful. And Ernie and I talked about how much to show, how much to give, how much to illustrate in terms of that trauma and that emotion, because he's a boss, Magic's a boss. And how much do we want to show the vulnerability that this Black man has as a result of what has happened to him and continues to happen to him?
Yeah, I'd also like to add, I mean, and Ben, probably would echo the same thing. Is like, I'd like to give Tamika all the flowers here, because it's like she was the perfect director for this episode in a way that was able to tap in and knew exactly, understand not only what we wanted to see out there, but also like she also brings her own experiences and storytelling to it. And again, and her, ability to communicate with the actors, and again, with Ernie and everybody else, really sort of like bring this story to life.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. It starts on the page.
Thank you so much. Nancy again. So I was really curious about, you mentioned in one of the earlier examples how the Watts riots episode influenced this one as well. And I wanted to know, can you talk about how you choose the stories that you're going to tell, not so much from the historical perspective, but just the kind of stories that you want to get into with Ben, and how that influences the rest of the storyline, like the through line?
I mean, everyone, I think, comes into the season with ideas, right? Like we all kind of, whether overtly or secretly, I think we're all kind of history buffs. And we want to sort of, be able to play in different time periods and tell stories. And again, some time periods lend themselves to specific events that you're like, oh, this would make a great scenario for an episode. Other times it's just it's a more thematic thing, and you kind of try and find the what's a good setting for that. But I think, every episode is different. There's no one like, oh, this is exactly how we do it each time. The only thing that I'd say is consistent is us making sure we are tracking our character's emotional journey, where we start them in the season, how we progress them until we get to our finale. The very not regimented, but certainly structure of character arcs dictates a lot. And when it comes to the scenarios we put them in, it is really about what can we make? What can we feasibly produce? What can we afford to do? There are realities
how much time do we have?
Yeah. So all those factors go into deciding what's an episode going to be. Can we find the location for it? Will we have the wardrobe for it? Can we find the props for it? All these things make the decision. And, when the studio network sign off on those ideas, then we get to sort of, carry them to fruition. But every writer brings something different. And I think that's where all these, the great ideas come from, their own perspectives, their own stories they want to tell, the time periods they want to tell them in, and how they want them told.
Thank you. Thanks. And I love the show. So
thanks for watching.